This lesson video is on multiplying and dividing rational numbers. Let's review some basic properties of operation specific to multiplication and division. Multiplying rational numbers, positive times a positive equals a positive, positive times a negative is negative, negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative times a negative is positive. You see some examples below. 3 times negative 3/4. Positive times negative is a negative. Multiply the numerators, that's 9. Multiply denominators, 3 is over 1, that's 4. Negative 4 times 5, negative 5 is positive 20. And 10 times 3, positive times positive is a positive. Now when you're dividing, you will multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor, and then you'll just follow the rules for multiplication. So 9 divided by 2/3 is 9 times. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. Positive times a positive, you're going to get a positive. 9 divided by negative 2/3 equals 9 times the reciprocal of negative 2/3, which is negative 3/2. Don't forget the negative sign. Here you have a positive times a negative, so you're going to have a negative answer. 9 divided by 4 equals 9 times 1 over 4. 1/4 is a reciprocal of 4. Positive times a positive is a positive answer. 9 divided by negative 4 equals 9 times the reciprocal of negative 4, which is negative 1/4. You have a positive times a negative, so you'll have a negative answer. Now let's do a couple of problems. Here you see 5 9s times 12 times negative 6 over 7. You recognize and write 12 as 12 over 1 since you have all fractions, and you can see that 9 and 12 have a common factor. So you'll factor 3 out of 12 and 9. You'll rewrite the problem. Then you'll multiply the numerators, 5 times 4 times negative 6. You'll multiply the denominators, 3 times 1 times 7. And you will get negative 120 over 21. You're going to factor 3 out of negative 120 and 21. You'll get negative 40 over 7 equals negative 5 and 5/7. That's in proper form. Now, if you look back up here, you might have noticed immediately that negative 6 and 3, that you could have factored out a 3 from these, and that would have saved some of the reducing here. So either way would have been okay. Let's look at another problem. 2.75 times 3/5 divided by 9/20. So you remember that when you divide, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's rewrite this expression. So it's all multiplication. 2.75 times 3/5 times the reciprocal of 9/20, which is 20 over 9. Now we're going to factor out some things. So the first thing is, I notice that I'm going to factor a 3 out of the 3 and the 9. Then I'm going to factor out a 5 from the 5 and the 20. And I'm going to be left with 2.75 times 4 over 3. So I'm going to convert 2.75 to a fraction, which would be 275 over 100. I'm going to factor out the 4 from 4 and 100. And then I'm going to factor out 25 from 25 and 275. I'm going to be left with 11 over 3. And I'm going to write that in proper form as 3 and 2/3. So we're using all of those properties of multiplication and division. When we're dividing, we multiply by the reciprocal. We're factoring, we notice the common factors when we're multiplying, and that's in a cross pattern. So it's the factors that are across from each other or top to bottom. So for example, 3/5, 3 over 5. If that were 3, or let's say 3 over 15, then I could factor out the 3 from the 3 and the 3 from the 15. But the way it is right now, 3 and 5 don't have any factors in common. But the 3 and the 9, those are cross, those do. And the 20 and the 5 do. So be careful when you're factoring. Let's take a look at the properties of operations one more time because this is really important in what you're going to do in the activity. So you remember that a positive times a positive is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. And a negative times a negative is a positive. And when you're dividing, you will multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor, and then you'll just follow the rules for multiplying integers. Okay, that ends this very brief video on multiplying and dividing rational numbers. Basically, you're using the same properties that you use for multiplying and dividing integers. And you notice that when you're dividing rational numbers, because your fractions are rational numbers, when you divide, you multiply by the reciprocal, but you bring the sign with it. You might flip that fraction, but you keep the same sign, whatever it was.